Hey, hello, and welcome to the Money Matters podcast with Copper. This is your host, Mandar Marathe, and with us, we have a very special guest today, Mohit Gang. Mohit, welcome to the podcast. Now, just to
Hi
give you a
Mandar.
yeah, hi. Just to give you a quick background and an intro, and then I'll hand it over to Mohit to add further to this. Mohit is the CEO and co-founder at Moneyfront, which is a wealth management company, and till date, they manage more than 2,500 crores worth of assets.
Yeah.
Before joining Moneyfront or before starting Moneyfront, Mohit was leading a few investment specialists at HSBC Bank as well as Citibank, right? And at HSBC, you've generated or managed $2 billion worth of wealth, and at at Citi, you've generated close to $9 million of revenue on an annual basis. So a lot of money has been under your management. Mohit, welcome to the podcast. And I mean, if you could add to this, tell us a little bit about yourself, something that we don't know, and maybe no one else knows. Anything that you'd like to add to this?
Okay. Thank you, Mandar, and it's kind of you and so nice of you to have me on your show. And I'm a big fan of Copper and your podcast. So look, I think you've spoken all about my professional life. Though it sounds big and the numbers are flashy and gaudy, honestly, I think it's just the places where I've worked with, right? So it's about the brands which I've worked with. So I've obviously larger part of my career has been with Citibank, good 10 years, where I grew through the ranks. I was a relationship manager myself, then I became an investment counselor, then a deputy branch manager for one of the largest branches in the country, and then went on to become the regional investments head for the Western region. So I grew along the rank, and that's where my portfolio size and my client base and everything started increasing. But one thing which perhaps quite a number of people don't know is that I come from a very humble background in a very small town called Jodhpur in Rajasthan, and Mumbai has just been my work life. Even in during my work days, I think the only mantra which I followed honestly, and which is what I've learned, is maintaining relationships, right? And till date I try and do that. What I religiously did then was met at least 2 to 3 clients a day, whatever be the role, whatever be the thing. I just maintained that rigor that I have to meet 2 or 3 clients every day. And if you see my last 15, 17 years, I've just not broken that tradition. There could be days which are off, but and there are days when I've met like 5, 6 clients also. So I've tried and maintained that tradition throughout my life, that I will meet at least 2 to 3 clients, or at least speak with them. Maybe lockdown was a different phase, but I continue to do that, and that's where all the learning is. So you learn on the ground, you learn with your clients. You don't learn anything beyond that. They teach you everything. That's the only thing.
That's great. That's good learning right up front. So, I mean, if I would have to ask you, how did you make the switch from established corporate career, 10 years at Citibank, and then what marked actually the beginning of Moneyfront? How did you get this idea? And, how did you make the switch from corporate life to entrepreneurial life?
So look, I think Mandar, all of us have gone through that phase in life, right? When you, and most of us have that kida, for lack of better word, ki yaar khud ka kuch karna hai, right? And that's where you really want to try and do something of your own. And that was always there in me. That streak, what do you say? That wild part of mine, always wanted to have freedom, always wanted to work on my own, and just do the way I want to do things, right? And being in wealth, that was the only thing which I knew. My entire career has been wealth management per se. So that's the only thing. Investments is the only thing perhaps which I understand so well that I can make a professional career out of it. So the choice was very easy. It was just about the timing part of it. So when I quit City and joined HSBC, it was a brief 1 year stint. While at HSBC, I was doing a product strategy kind of a role, and that's when I realized that. I am much better at sales or creating platforms and creating systems and trying and meeting clients and managing their wealth per se. And that's when my background work started and everything. And immediately, when the regulations became more favorable, we thought it is the right opportune time to enter the market with a very unique proposition, a digital paperless platform which could have given access to direct plans of mutual funds in 2016. That was a new actually. We were in fact the first platform in this country to go live with a paperless access to direct plans of mutual funds in around August, September 2016. So I thought the idea was unique. Market was favorable. Mutual fund as an industry was growing. It's still growing in this country, and there is enough and more scope. So just cut the umbilical cord and be on your own.
Got it. And were you this entrepreneurial when you were a kid or young? How did you actually make your first buck? Right. I mean, not regular job, but did you sell anything when you were young? How did you make your
Oh
first money?
yeah, look, don't take me otherwise, but I'm a Marwadi Jain, right? So it just runs into me. Honestly, I was good at studies, and during exams, there were friends near you, right, who always wanted to copy, and I was quite good. I was quite decent. I was like the first ranker and all during my class days and all. So I used to just for lack of better words, I used to sell my papers in exams. As in, I used to just tell them, "Ki boss, I would want whatever for my summer vacations. I would want some 5 tennis balls or 2 balls and 2 ice creams a day after the exams are done and everything." So not buck per se, and I used to give only that much which was sufficient for them to carry through. Not
Yeah.
like really pour out my papers and all. But yeah, if you ask me how did I first make my first buck, that was those days were the days when I used to make my buck like that.
So really, you monetized it, but in a barter
Oh
scheme,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Rather
I
than
knew I look any which ways those were friends. I had to show them the paper. I thought why not make a bargain out of it. So yeah.
yes. And you, so I mean, I guess money was kind of ingrained into your day-to-day life, or actually, let's say, earning was ingrained. Uh, was
Uh
there any influential person in your life who kind of helped you understand the importance of wealth creation, or earning money, or
Oh yes, I think look, Mandar, we come from a very very humble background, basically, right? We had just about enough to be in a normal life. We didn't have a flashy life or a flashy house or a flashy childhood with everything at our disposal. Nothing. So we had very limited means, and I think my parents fought and worked very hard to make sure that we got a good education, and I could see them, right? I could see them save every rupee out of it to try and manage the household within limited budgets. My dad was in a bank, basically. So and he was very very well planned, very well organized. He still is like 100x much more organized than what I am, or well planned than I am, basically. And I think my first education on money came from him. The way he used to manage things so prudently, so frugally, in spite of a limited amount coming every month. I think they just managed the household very nicely, and we never felt like we were missing out something big, right? And now we see our own selves. It just the more you get, the difficult it gets to manage things around you, right? So I think those were the first grains of learning.
got it. And do you think that maybe this should be institutionalized? I mean, teaching money, the entire world runs on money, but it's not taught in schools, it's not taught in colleges. Like, you'll have, yeah, what are stock markets, what are mutual funds, all of that
Oh,
basic theories there in colleges, but I mean, they never teach.
honestly, I'm very surprised. We
Yeah.
teach kids trigonometry, and we teach them geometry, and we teach them calculus and what not. Honestly, basically, trust me, I've never used that calculus formula or the trigonometry thing ever again in my life. Perhaps I would have taken science, math, or been an engineer. Then maybe things would have been different. But I don't know how that helps in life. Honestly, I don't understand how that helps. What would have actually helped me for some basics of personal finance. That's about it, and it need not be like a huge course. Maybe from class 8th onwards or ninth onwards, when kids start getting their pocket money, they need to learn the importance of savings. They need to learn how money compounds, what is inflation, how does what is real money, how do they save for their future, how do they plan for their retirement. They don't even have a till such time that they pass college. In fact, there's nothing. There's nothing in this country which teaches about personal finance. There's not even an online academy to my mind, honestly. And that's a thought which keeps crossing me every now and then, that why we teach kids coding now, honestly, right, Mandar?
Yeah.
So you have coding from class whatever. I should not be
First
complaining.
standard.
Yeah, my daughter also has joined a coding class because she enjoys it. But look, we're teaching them all that, but we aren't teaching them personal finance, right? So I'm sure there is a scope, and there is an imminent need to do that.
Definitely. So, I mean, we are just to announce, we are coming up with a course specifically for school kids,
Oh
and the
wow,
parents also can participate in that. So, somewhere around February or March, we'll launch the course.
that's very interesting. All the
So,
best.
so that will help, I guess, in inculcating these habits. So, I mean, I would want to say, so you did you get the understanding of power of compounding quite early as you was in school, or maybe much later? When did you actively actually start, investing? Was it when you got your job, or how did you come about, investing?
Oh yeah, honestly, I think that's one part of my life which I still regret. I started my career with Samsung. That was my campus placement, honestly. So it's a consumer durable firm. So though I was in Mumbai and I started investing then for tech saving purposes, but the thought of compounding or money management was not there per se. I started investing then, but my first real in what do you say graduation into money management happened when I joined City in 2005. And but from my second month onwards, uh, I was into it. I understood that boss, this is, if you have to create wealth in life, you have to move squares, you have to compound your wealth, and you have to keep doubling your liquid money in a particular time frame. And that's you can't think linear, you have to go geometric with your money, basically. And from the second month onwards, I had an SIP running, which till date I haven't stopped. Only when I purchased a house I paused it, but I've never redeemed out of it. What I purchased in 2005 I still hold, and I continue to hold, and I've never redeemed, right? And that's where I firmly believe that if you give time to anything, be it money, be it relationship, be it parents, be it family, be it anything in life, honestly, your work, your everything, it will compound for you someday. The compounding benefits comes at a very later stage, but you will get rewarded if you just be patient and hold it.
Got it. I
And
think the
that's when I
stock
started.
market was somewhere around 8-9 thousand at that time, around 2005
Oh
or
yeah,
so.
I've seen the cycles, honestly. You're right. At that point in time, Sensex was around that level, and we went through the 2007 8 ka cycle. It went up to 2021 or thousand, then crashed back to 7,800. So I've seen, and I've stayed put all this while. I've only increased my allocations, but I've never come out of it. I've never panicked because I know that's for long term corpus, and I just want to keep holding it.
So I guess maybe since 2005 you have been investing, and you have kept or built that corpus. You mentioned that you started investing via the SIP route, right? So uh, anything else that you, let's say 15 years now down the line, uh, have you diversified your investments, or what does your portfolio actually consist of? What How do you allocate? Let's say you earn 100 rupees a month, right? How would you allocate that 100 rupees? Especially this is important for someone who's starting off their job, and how should they allocate, let's say, 100 rupees? If they are earning 100 rupees, what do you do with your money allocation? How do you perform?
Okay. So look, there are some golden principles of personal finance in terms of how you need to allocate your funds and how you need to go about doing that. Uh, Honestly, one such rule is called a 50-30-20 rule, basically, which means that 50% of your money can go in for your basic necessities, your EMIs, your household expenses, and so on and so forth. 30% of your money can perhaps go in for your luxuries or your additional purchases, or something which you really want to have, which are beyond your basic needs. And 20% bare minimum has to go in for investments compulsorily, right? So that's one very very basic thumb rule. And the second fundamental equation which one needs to follow and which one often ignores in life is that ये जो 50-30-20 rule है उसमें 20 comes the first. When you get rupees 100, you have to first subtract 20 and then provision for 50 and then for 30, basically. So it's called 50-30-20, it should ideally be 20-50-30, which means that you get your invest income, you subtract your investments, and then whatever is remaining with you, then you spend. That is the portion for your expenses. But the unfortunate part of everyone's life is that our equations are investments income minus expenses, और जो बच गया वो investment. That's the wrong equation to follow. So if you correct that equation in your life, you will never ever go wrong. And that's one portion which I have religiously tried and corrected. Both me and my wife are working. So we just try and make sure that one particular chunk of our money which comes in religiously goes out for investments basically. And that portion now obviously over time has become higher because you are getting rid of your liabilities as you go on. There was a time when we had a home loan, and the bigger chunk went in for EMI payments and everything. And as I told you, I stopped my SIP also for 3 years in between. But we now continue. We try and make sure that at least 25 to 30% of our income minimum, if we can do more, we do more also, goes out into various investment forms. In terms of diversification, Mandar, honestly, I've always maintained some balance between my direct stock portfolio and my mutual fund portfolio. I've tried and kept the proportion 50-50, though for last 2.5 years I've been restricted to trade in stocks because of my wife's job. And so we now only build our mutual fund portfolios basically. And I'm quite happy with that. Honestly, it's a hassle free thing. You getting into good fund managers and good themes, and you're fine with that.
And
But I have an
obviously,
old existing equity
Moneyfront
portfolio.
has all the data when it comes to which mutual fund schemes to pick or which
Oh
direction
yeah,
to
yeah,
go.
absolutely, absolutely. We have a we have good inbuilt algos at Moneyfront. We also have a proper research desk which tries, and we try and keep turning out with themes and also some bit of market cycles and everything. And we continuously write about those things also on our blogs, basically. So yeah, Moneyfront definitely helps. And being into this job, you know what is you have some amount of pulse. Though no one can claim to be an expert in the markets, but you have some pulse, right? But one thing which I firmly believe in and which I continue to do is I continue to if I have loans, I prepay them with a higher chunk, right? I have a small portion of home loan which is now more a tax arbitrage for me, which I keep in my portfolio, but I've always prepaid larger chunks so that I get rid of that liability quickly. And the second part is building a simultaneous debt portfolio. And my debt portfolio today is not very massive because at this age I don't need it. Perhaps with after crossing 50 or something, I will increase my debt allocations. But at this age, what I've done is I've at least maintained my PPFs and PFs basically, right? So PPF contribution is one such thing which between our entire family we just make sure that we are doing it religiously every year. I like the instrument. It's a tax free 8.5% kind of an income which you don't get otherwise, honestly. And as a debt instrument, I just love it. So I think those few things, those basic hygiene things, I've perhaps taken care of.
Got it.
Not sure if I've answered you.
Yes, yes, you did quite well actually. If you'd have to give, so all of this is in retrospect. Now we are talking in 2020, but if you'd have to give this advice to your 15-year-old younger self, maybe in 2005, would you have done anything else
Oh
differently?
yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Though I don't regret, I was still early in my life in terms of investments. But there's always something which could have been done better, right? And I wish I would have started investing right with my first pocket money. उस टाइम पे honestly 100 रुपए का सिप होता नहीं था. आजकल शुरू हो गया है micro sip, so you can start a sip with as low as 100 rupees also, right? And that's fantastic, honestly. That's just fantastic. So even with 100 rupees for people who are young, you getting your pocket money, try saving that money. Trust me, in 10 years you will realize what can you create for yourself, right? So that is one part. And second part is I still regret not having been started these PPFs and PFs and not taking it seriously during my early days of job, my first 2-3 years of job. Honestly, I think I should have taken it more seriously. PF should always be transferred along with your job, should never be withdrawn. Those are your last courses in life. Those are your what do you say, last recalls in life. कि आपके पास जब कुछ भी नहीं रहेगा तो you will have a huge, at your retirement you will have a huge PF PPF corpus, and which is fantastic, guys. So trust on those schemes. Tax free income is a tax free income. You have to believe in that.
Got it. And now, since you've switched to a CEO entrepreneurial role, right? Uh, Basically, your earning through your own business. So what were some of the challenges maybe you faced, once you started up? Did you keep aside some funds for taking care of your family? What was your backup plan? Was there any backup plan, or you jumped with both feet in? How did you start up basically with
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, honestly, look, you yourself are an entrepreneur, Mandar, and you know how the journey is for everyone. Honestly, I think it is almost similar for everyone. You go through a cycle. You go through a cycle of pain. You go through a cycle of turbulence. You go through a cycle when you're running out of funds. You're running out of ideas, and you go through a cycle of despair also when you really think, are you into the right place, right time, right? And would you want to go back into your life? And I've gone through all those emotions, honestly, and I'll not mince my words, basically. But one good thing which I did, again coming from this background, I had a plan B. I had a plan B, which was not that I will do anything else. I still don't want to do anything else in my life, but money front. Money front is my life. But I had provisions, and I was adequately. So look, my wife is working, and she's been working for a fairly long while, and Butta, she's been doing fairly well for herself, right? So that portion was well taken care of. In terms of our outstanding liabilities, we just had a small home loan which was left, and we knew that we can take care of that through her income. And even if I didn't earn any income for first 2 years, which was thought of कि 2 साल कुछ नहीं होगा basically, or worst case scenario 3 साल भी हो सकता है कि wipe off हो जाए, in terms of the income which you make, right? And we were planned, mentally tuned for that, and we had a reasonable corpus. As I told you, मैंने कभी अपने portfolios redeem नहीं किए थे, तो वो हमेशा हैं, वो आज भी बने हुए हैं. Would touch with God's grace, we've never had an reason to come out of it, uh, basically. So liabilities बहुत कम थी, which were manageable. We knew our income was sufficient. My wife was working, and there's always this thought कि यार आपने 15-20 साल निकाले हैं इस इंडस्ट्री में, you understand well, worst case, if God forbid something were to happen and you were to turn back to the industry, there's always a window open because of your relationships, right? Though that situation might never arise, honestly. But I, I think anyone who wants to take an entrepreneurial punch has to do a 360 roundup of his life, of his family. How well and how connected are they, how dependent are they, and what are the provisions for at least 3 years, and then only move ahead.
Yeah, so like you said, it's very important, I think, to bring your family into the picture and take their opinion,
Oh yes, yes.
uh, take their help, advice.
And my daughter was small, so honestly, we had some ropeway to go.
Got it, got it. Do you have a mentor, or someone you look up to now with the age of, I mean, we are living in the internet age, and you don't actually need to have a mentor, one mentor. You can obviously learn from hundreds of investors or hundreds of mentors globally, right? So is there a specific mentor who you've met in person and maybe learn from that person, or are there some investors, or people in the financial domain that you look up to when it comes to
Look, it's a difficult question to answer because simply I'm a person who tries and picks up nuts and bolts from everywhere. Basically, if I'm talking to you, I'll make sure I pick up two threads from you, and try and imbibe it. Basically, and that's been my whole thing. When I go and meet so many clients, I just try and learn from them. So in a way, all my clients have been my mentors because I've not learned by reading books. There was no course, right? Wealth management you learn on the ground with your clients, and they've been my best mentors all through. They will ask you such tough questions about their portfolios, about taxation, about funds and everything, that you'll have to go back, do research, and come back and answer. 7 out of 10 times you can't answer them on the face, basically. With age maybe you can, but still still there are many unanswered questions, right? Plus, along with that, I'm fairly there on the social media. I like following Twitter handles and everything. I like few influencers out there. I basically follow what Naval says on Twitter, his thought, his philosophy. In terms of real life, my co-founder has been my biggest backbone when it comes to work. My wife has been a tremendous support, honestly. So I can always go back, fall back, crash my ideas on them. Whatever, wherever I get stuck, I go back to my co-founder and ask him, "यार, बताओ क्या करना चाहिए? What is the right way to go about it?" And he's always there, right? So multiple people, multiple different areas where I withdraw and try and draw my inspiration from. So, and that's a combination.
great. Any books that you've read, So I've read, I think, Intelligent Investor. Uh,
Oh,
that's one book which I have read. But any books that you would recommend for people, basically on personal finance or better money
oh,
habits?
lots. Honestly, I read a fair bit, and there are many books which I really love. But for people who want to start their journey, I will recommend a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a very small, short book. It's the Bible of starting investments. Honestly, I think everyone into the journey of personal finance should read that book once. It just gives you some very basic mantras of how to handle things. I like that one. There's this book called Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, which has just come some time back. It's a good read. Intelligent Investors, of course, you've said. There is uh, there's this book by Saurabh Mukherjee. Sorry, I'm missing out the name of that. Uh, I'll
Yeah, maybe
perhaps
once you
text you the
recollect,
name.
I'll let me know.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
put
yeah.
in the
That's a
show
very
notes.
nice, simple read, which everyone should read in terms of understanding the finances and how to evaluate a company or a stock. So it's a very good
Got it.
book.
Got it. Talking about 2020, we've had a tough year last year, right? Has anything changed? What has been like your biggest surprise, or what has been the biggest change that you've seen in your work life? For example, let me say, in I have this stat from United States where they had 10 million, I think, retail investors till 2019, and in 2020 that went up to 23 million. So they doubled, more than doubled their retail investors in mutual funds or stocks. So have you come across any such thing for the Indian market, or what is the biggest change that you've seen? You know,
Oh, absolutely. My life has changed upside down, honestly. Basically, so we've been working from home all this while. It's only in Jan that we have opened our offices, and that too partially, right? But the amount of activity which we have churned out at Moneyfront in last 9 months is unbelievable. It's unbelievable, honestly. The kind of tech efforts which we have built in, we were only a B2C platform till the end of 2019. 2020 March onwards, we've also become a B2B. March, actually April onwards, we've also become a B2B platform where we have started offering our platform as a white label solution to anyone who wants to start his journey into investments or client advisory. Basically, you can just take our platform, simply plug and play. We will manage the entire backend ops, everything, and we have the technology to handle it all and give you a digital interface, right? So that's been our biggest swinger this year. We've also gotten big time into high end analytics projects. So we're doing a project with Kotak Private Wealth, which is completed successfully, launched a reporting mechanism, a reporting tool for them. We've done it with Motilal Oswal Private. We're doing it with one more leading private wealth player in the industry. So we are making reporting solutions for them, which are loaded with analytics and everything, and which churns out decks of 40, 50, 60 slides for clients within minutes, and analyzes their portfolio completely across all asset classes, across geographies, across family members. So we're doing a lot of stuff digitally now, and this has all happened in lockdown. Surprisingly, we've just completely ramped up our tech, and we're quite happy doing these works.
yeah, maybe all the time you saved on commute has gone into
Absolutely.
thinking. That's what's happened for me. I mean, at least 2.5 hours daily, which has gone into commute. I've
Yeah, totally,
save
totally.
that, and you get time to think for what you can do for your business and for yourself. So yeah, so congratulations on so many big launches last year.
Thank you so much.
Apart from money, I mean, since we've been talking about money matters and wealth and money creation, is there any other topic or subject that brings out curiosity in you, or you like it, anything other than money? What
Oh
is it?
yeah, I'm into quite a number of things, Mandar, honestly. And I think money and my business is just one part of it. But when I got into it, the mind got so cluttered that I had to actually find out spaces to declutter myself. Honestly, first 2 years were very very tough, and I'll not mince my words out there. And I had to literally run out of my work. just sit and think as to where to go about, right? That's when I started running. I've been a regular runner now. I run every alternate day in the mornings. I've done my half marathons for last 1.5 years in reasonable timing. I've gotten in big time into trekking for last 2 3 years. So I make it a point that I do 2 3 treks, or at least if not more, maybe 4 5 treks every year. Uh, in and around Mumbai, I want to do some good northern tracks. So the multiple things I've gotten into of late, last 2 odd months, 1 month odd, I've started playing tennis. So trying to learn a new skill. Uh, Books have been a good companion all through during the lockdown. So yeah, I think there's a bouquet of these 3 4 things which I keep busy with, and more than anything else, honestly, I think it's time with my daughter, which I've got at home. Being sitting at home, time with the family. I think that was never happening to such an extent. So all this is due to lockdown, and I'm thankful for the lockdown, honestly. I have no reasons to complain.
Got it. If there was, let's say, you had ownership of a billboard that you could place in, let's say, BKC, or let's say on Worli Seaface, or one of the prime areas in Mumbai, right? What is one message maybe you'd want to put out on that billboard, right? What is, let's say, life message, whether it's related to wealth, money, whatever it is? What is that one message maybe that you'd want to put out on that billboard?
Uh, my one message, which was my DP for a fairly long time, I've just changed it with something else. I think it said uh, better an oops than a sorry.
Got it.
So basically, what it means is just try everything out. Don't regret that you didn't try for it or didn't go for it. Perhaps it's very much possible. Then after trying, you'd say, "Oh, oops, what has happened?" Basically, why did I ever get into this? But it's still okay. Oops is still okay than a sorry. So I love that line.
Great. Who else would you want to have on our podcast? I mean, if there is any guest recommendations that you have, and we should have them on our show, we'll try to get them. Anyone else you'd like to see talk about money, wealth?
So look, there are many influencers on Twitter who talk brilliantly on money matters and subjects of money. But if you ask me, what would I love to see? I would love to see more women influencers on subjects of money and finance coming and talking to people, because I think the way a woman can influence it, no one else can. Right, and families tend to listen when females take a charge of finances, which is still an unfortunate part that very few of them do that. But yeah, and you'll find a lot of them on social media who are trying and doing, or maybe YouTubers who are trying and doing great work.
Yes. I
Honestly,
think there is CA Rachna Fadke, who is
yeah,
very
absolutely. She's
wealthy, who are doing quite well in terms of,
absolutely,
growing their
absolutely.
influence. So yeah, we'll try and get them on our podcast.
Yeah. There's this
Uh,
guy called Vishal Khandelwal from Safal Niveshak. I just love the way he
yes,
writes and everything. He's quite good. So
great. Great. Thanks a lot. Before we end the podcast, any parting advice or tip you have for people who have not yet started investing or managing their money wisely? Any parting advice that you have?
Look, I think believe in the magic of compounding. It honestly is true, but it takes a long while and a lot of patience before it can actually give you results, right? So unless you give it 20, 30 years, it will just not work for you. So whenever you get into something, uh, be your own venture or your investments or anything related to your personal life, get into it with a very, very long term view. Don't take a myopic short-term trading view on anything. Go with an investing horizon, and you will definitely see rewards coming in. Compounding does happen in life.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mohit. It was wonderful to have you on the podcast, and
My
all the
pleasure.
best for the future of Money Front.
Thank you so much, Mandar, and it was lovely speaking to you. And wish you too all the best for the new venture which is coming up. And I'll keenly watch that out.
Thanks a lot.